Oh, hi. Welcome to Aquata Zoo, where we like to nerd out over all things zoo and aquarium related. I'm l.semple, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how to lead people who won't do what they're told. Have you ever worked in an environment like this? Have you been the person who won't do the thing that you're being told? Have you been the leader of the person who is not doing the thing that you've been told? That's what we're talking about today. It's a complicated situation. There is no one fail-safe cookie cutter kind of solution to this. It really is a problem that's based on the people involved and the situation at hand and the organization it's in. There's a lot of factors and it needs to be picked apart a little bit. So we'll talk about it. So this is a problem that I often see with new leaders that have been put in their position, especially if they happen to have been peers prior to this. So they were at the same level as everyone else before, but now they've suddenly been thrust into the spotlight. Now they're the boss of the group, and so they try to make their mark because they just don't know what they're doing. If you've been here, I understand. I also have been there, and it takes a lot of effort to dig yourself out of the hole if you start off strong like this. Understand that if you're a new leader and you have not taken the time to build up a relationship with any of the people that you're leading, there's a very high likelihood that you're going to tell them to do something because it's technically what you have the authority to do, and they're not going to want to do it, and they won't. Is it a fireable offense? Maybe. Should you do that? Probably not. But let's get into what the issues might be. More likely than not, this is a communication problem. So either you have not shown that you care about that person enough to listen to them, or you're just straight up speaking a different language and they don't understand what you're saying. So I've seen this happen both ways, and it's equally complicated to resolve because, yes, we're all speaking the same language, presumably, technically, and the instructions may not be complicated, but there often is an issue with communicating the why behind what you're telling someone to do. And also, please do not underestimate the effectiveness of phrasing something as a question rather than a mandate. So if I walk up to somebody that I work with and I say, fill out this record, that is a little aggressive, and they might not understand that it is a time sensitive thing because I just said fill out the record. And I did not give any more context than that. I didn't ask, hey, would you mind, as soon as you're done doing that thing that you're doing, I've got to have this in by Friday, whatever, and would you mind please filling out this record as soon as you're done? That is a totally different situation. And somebody who works with me on a regular basis would probably be alarmed if I just came in and said, fill out this record, because it's unnecessarily aggressive. And I'm not normally like that. And so I normally will ask, and I'll say, I'll give the background that I need. If there's a time frame in mind, I will let you know. So I will say, hey, I need this record filled out by Friday. You were the one that was there when this was all happening, so it seems like you should be the one to fill it out. If you wouldn't mind, just make sure that it's done by Friday. And if you need help doing that, if you don't have the time and I can help you somewhere else so you can get this done, just let me know. And so that's more like what I would approach something like this as. But that's because I have a lot of trial and error under my belt. But I've always been the type of, I guess, leader that would try and be nice about it and ask rather than demand. Because I'm not going to ask anyone to do anything that I wouldn't be willing to do, and I'm going to approach people more along the lines of how I would prefer to be approached. So I don't like people coming to me and say, hey, do this. I would like to hear all of the information that goes with it. Not everyone's like that. They might not even care about all the other information, but it's just respectful to phrase things in a way that appeals to the person that you're talking to rather than straight up demands. Now, do you as the leader technically have the authority to deliver that message however you want? Kind of, almost. Technically you do, but are you choosing to basically cash in your I'm the authority here card on asking for everyday silly stuff? I personally wouldn't. If there were to come to a point where I needed someone to do something right now and I don't want any questions, I need you to just go do it, and please trust me, because hopefully we've built a relationship at this point, I will cash that in if I need to. But then it has more emphasis when I finally do it. So if I phrase something not as a question that I need done and I don't have the time to answer, I'll straight up say it. I'll be like, listen, I need you to do this. Please trust me. And I will tell you the background as soon as I have a chance, but I've got to go, whatever's going on, and I will cash in the authority card right then. You know what I mean? So that I choose to do that in strategic points when, usually generally when there's a crisis going on, where I need them to trust me and I need them to just do it and don't ask any questions right now. I will come back to it and explain what's going on. But when time is of the essence, when there are lives on the line, because I work in a zoo or aquarium, sometimes there are lives on the line, usually not human lives, but animal lives, I will just act and demand that people help me just so we can get through it. And then we will circle back, as the business folks say, and I will go back and explain what's going on. And I'm hoping that I built enough trust with the teammate so that they understand that I'm not trying to be a jerk right now. I know it's coming off jerky, a little jerk-ish, if you will, but I will come back to it. We will talk about it, and I'm sorry. Please trust me right now. But when you have a leader who is automatically just, that's how they communicate, is the demanding way, because they have the authority to do so, you're just going to have a disgruntled, upset, bitter, angry, resistant team. A very resistant team. So this issue to me tends to be a communication problem. So either the person you're talking to does not appreciate the way that you're talking to them, or they don't understand the background of the issue, what you're asking them to do. Maybe they don't understand what you're saying and why you're saying it. I am a big fan of starting with why. If you've never read Simon Sinek's book about Start With Why, it is fabulous. You should do that. And it's very helpful for leaders. Because what you're asking them to do, you may think that's the thing that you need done, but that person that you're talking to may have a different vision of how to get to where you're trying to get to that might be more efficient. It might be better. It's just not the way that you have asked them to do it. So if you start with why, like, I need to do, we're trying to get way over there with this thing, and you show them what your goal is, they can probably help you get there. And it might be a different route. They might be able to think creatively. They might be more familiar with this situation than you are. And that's okay. You as the leader don't have to know everything, shockingly. You hired those fine folks for a reason, right? So often this is a communication issue. And the way that it's best to combat it, there's kind of a twofold answer to that, I would say. And again, each of these situations is going to be a little bit different, and it depends on your organization. It depends on your relationship with this person that's being resistant. It depends on how you're speaking to one another, your experience and knowledge as a leader, their knowledge and experience as a follower. Like, all of these different factors play into this. So I would definitely advise approaching this with some curiosity. Try to keep the frustration to a minimum. So when you ask someone to do something and they straight up haven't done it, ask questions about that and be curious about it. Don't ask with the intent of getting them to fess up to anything, because that's not appropriate, and there may not actually be anything to really confess. So if I were to ask someone to do something and they did not ever get around to it, I would ask, what's going on? Is there a reason that they weren't able to get to it? It could be just that they haven't had time. It could be that I did not emphasize the timeline and I did not give them enough information to execute. It could be that they have no idea what I'm talking about from the start, which is a bigger issue. So that means that I was not paying attention and did not even give them the proper training they needed to do the thing I said that they needed to do. And so we need to start over from square one right there. It could be that they don't appreciate how I asked them to do it. It could be that I just didn't give them enough information for them to feel confident enough to execute whatever I was asking. And so you got to ask questions about it. What's going on? Do you understand what I was asking? Do you have questions for me? Do you feel comfortable, confident enough to do it? Is there something that I can do to help you with that? If you need to free up some of their time to be able to work on that, that's something else. So yes, this is essentially a communication breakdown that is happening. And I said that I notice this more in leaders who are new or leaders who are newly promoted anyway, because they haven't taken the time prior to there being an issue with people not doing stuff to get to know their team, to understand how they work, to present the team with some goals that they need to meet together, like all of you work together to meet. We haven't gone over how the culture might change, what's different, how I work as a leader, how I expect them to meet their goals. All these things that kind of make up more of like a culture or a climate of your organization or your team, those things haven't been explained. And so, sure, you tell them to do the thing, but they're kind of under the impression that they can do it whenever they want, or they're just kind of resistant to you as a leader specifically, just because you haven't put in that time to get to know them as a leader and follower. And this is very important for people who are going from peer to the leader. So they were on the same equal footing before, now you're the leader. You do have to put in some effort to understand each other now on this different level. So where you could say what you wanted before, now you're the leader, you can't necessarily say the same types of things as the team's leader as you might have when you were just a random member of the team. And those differences need to be kind of fleshed out a little bit. They can't necessarily come to you and complain like they used to when you were just one of their peers, one of their coworkers, because now you're obligated as their leader to do something about it. Or you maybe want to encourage them, depending on your style as a leader, right? You may want to encourage them to kind of figure out their own problems, which I would highly encourage. Do not fix all of their problems for them, because they're not learning anything that way, and they will not be ready to be a leader the next time that opportunity comes around. Anyway, I digress. But the point is, it is really hard to establish that relationship that has changed because someone has moved into a leadership position and now has authority over the others. It's awkward. It happens, and you need to take some time to establish how you envision this working, and maybe work it out together, how you envision this working. And that doesn't mean necessarily you as the new leader let everyone steamroll you with their wants and needs and desires and their visions of what the team should look like. But you work together to meet in the middle somewhere, to kind of build a future together, because that's much more attainable for all of you if you all have opinions and input into how you want to move forward together. I know that I work differently than my former supervisor, and I've tried to rebuild our team because everything got shuffled around when my last supervisor left and then I moved into that position. It took some time to reestablish where we were and where we're headed, and I wanted to keep some things the same for the team's sake, and I wanted to make some changes elsewhere. They're not huge changes, but it is different. Like, they have to come to me differently than they did before. Because I have more authority now, and I'm obligated to react in certain ways because I'm the leader of the team, right? So it's just you build that relationship together. You get to know them and what their hopes and dreams are as far as their work is concerned. And you kind of molded around your own, I guess, your own goals that your supervisor is setting for you, right? You're trying to make them all kind of align, so you're kind of all working in the same direction. So if you don't put in that time ahead of time and you newly get promoted, you don't bother working on those relationships first, and you just start demanding things, you're going to have a very angry team very quickly, because they're already kind of reeling from change, and not a lot of people handle change well. And then on top of that, this person who they used to like is now abruptly ordering them around and trying to change everything for the sake, as far as they can tell, for the sake of changing everything, so that they can put their like little thumbprint on everything that's happening rather than understanding their thoughts and feelings and concerns about the change that's happening. And so they just get really resistant, because who are you? Who do you think you are, trying to tell them how to do their job that they've been doing this whole time? You're the one who changed jobs. So it's really hard to navigate that change. I could talk about this one all day. But anyway, I see this issue where you've got a leader who's trying to get their team to do stuff that they want them to do, but the team is resistant for whatever reason. Either a certain teammate, like a certain person, or the entire team. And it generally revolves around not having built the trust in the relationship prior to there being an ask for things to be done, and or terrible communication. Both things kind of combine, and then you've got this leader who's super frustrated that the team's not doing what they want, and then you have a whole team of people who are annoyed and very resistant. They're just digging in their heels even further because this person doesn't care about them enough, or at least that's what they feel, and that's what they're observing in how this is all going down. This person doesn't care about them, so why should they care about getting that person's goals done, right? So it is a breakdown in communication. It's a breakdown in relationship. And I just want to make sure that if you are in the situation where at some point you switch to being a teammate into that team's leader, that you take the time to understand that things have changed, and it's not going to be terrible. If you put the time into understanding the new relationship that you need to develop with your teammates, it's different than the one that you had when you were just buddies at the same level. It is different now because you have authority, you have expectations on you, you have a new viewpoint, and you need to basically rebuild that relationship from scratch. Like, sure, yes, you know that, their birthday is in September, that kind of stuff doesn't change, and that they like puppies, right? Those kinds of things don't change just because you change jobs. You know some parts of those people that were on your team before, but now you need to understand how they are as subordinates, I guess. I don't like using the word subordinates, but as followers maybe. And so you need to understand like how they prefer to be communicated to, how they best learn. So if you're trying to tell people to do stuff, but not delivering that message in a way that makes sense to them, because you're not kind of taking into account the best ways that they communicate and they understand the situation, then yeah, that they might not do it. There might be, and it might not be like a resistance thing. It might just be that they don't understand what's happening and why. Because maybe you knew that they were kind of a person who learns best by seeing it in front of them first, and then they feel confident, and then they can go do it. They need to see someone else do it. So if you go in there and tell them, hey, go do this thing you've never done before, and they will just kind of freeze and be like, okay. And then they want to take some time to like ask around and figure it out, see if someone can show them this thing. And it's not, at that point, it's not because, or they're not resisting because they don't like you or they're bitter or anything like that. And leaders might read that wrong. They just might not have the confidence to do it because you have now asked them to do it just verbally and not shown them how to do it, which is their preferred way of learning. And therefore they're like, I have no idea what to do. So they're going to have to take more time to figure out how to do the thing, right? So it would be best for cases like that if you just go ahead and show the person when you're asking them, like, hey, can you do this from now on? Like, I'll do it today, you watch, and we'll make sure that you understand. And then would you mind doing this every week, like from here on out? That is something that makes much more sense to that person. Now you're appealing to the way that they learn and the way they understand the work, and they have a better understanding of what you're asking them to do. So you're essentially communicating with them on their terms and in their way, which, sorry guys, as a leader, you have to do that. At least if you want to be a successful one, I guess. If you communicate in only the way that you understand, you're not doing them any favors, and they are going to flounder. And then you're going to look bad. Because you are bad. No, I'm just kidding. It's definitely your responsibility as the leader to understand your team and how they learn and how they communicate, and then you meet them there. That is your job, because your job is to make sure that they produce, and to make sure that they have what they need, that the obstacles are removed, and that you are kind of helping them out. At least that's how I view leadership. There are definitely leaders I've worked with in the past who would very much disagree with me, but many of them have had a very troubled leadership journey. And I would say mine's a little bit more smooth. But yes, if you're a leader, understand your people, understand where they're coming from, what they're facing, what's going on, how they learn when you're asking them to do stuff. And I definitely would suggest asking rather than demanding, except for in certain circumstances. And hopefully the trust that you've built with them up until this point before you make the ask is appropriate enough that when you do make the demand in the heat of the moment, when there's a crisis on the line, whatever's going on, they will trust you enough to just go do the thing. Even though they don't understand why or what's happening. Hopefully they have the confidence enough to do it and trust that you know what you're doing, and you're asking them to do something serious and in a hurry because you trust them to do it, and you are going to come back to them and explain it later. Sometimes it happens like that. Sometimes we just need to get stuff done, and we don't need to talk about it, and then we'll come back to it later. I'm a huge fan of a debrief in the aftermath of stuff like that, so that everyone has a chance to discuss their thoughts, their feelings, their observations about what has happened and where we could do better in the future. And that's where a lot of these kind of conversations will happen. So say you've got a big project going on, you're telling people what they need to do, they're not doing it, nobody understands what's going on, whatever the case might be, the end result is that you've got an angry team, a frustrated leader, and work that's not getting done. So at some point, I would definitely call some sort of meeting, whether it's in a group format or individually, and address the issues head on. Do not let it fester, because it's just going to get worse as time goes on if you don't address the issues with the trust and the relationship, and as well as the communication and the learning styles and all that kind of fun stuff. So if you let those things go without addressing them, they're just going to snowball into a much worse problem, and everyone's going to be miserable. You are, they are, your boss is not going to be happy, like the organization's not meeting its goals, like it's just a mess. So just face it. Understand that the problem might be you. Leadership is not easy. And it's not necessarily fun all the time either. This is where it's hard. This is where it's frustrating. This is where you need to figure out the next best step for you and for your team. So I definitely would hope that you would start it off when it is easy, building those relationships, asking people what drives them, asking people how they're doing, asking them about their family, understand where they're trying to go with their career so that you can help them, and teaching them things that you know, because it's good to do that, to build your bench a little bit deeper so that if you were to move up, they're ready to move up too. So doing all of that when going is easy is very valuable and necessary. I lament the fact that I spend so much time talking when I'm at work, because I am an introvert and I don't necessarily love the endless talking, but it is necessary to make sure that I understand the people that are working with me, and to make sure that we've got a relationship, and that if I need to draw on it, I can, and I can communicate with those people well and ask them to help me in specific ways so that they understand what I'm asking, why I'm asking it, and they'll be more inclined to help me because hopefully they like me. So if you start off before ever making a demand by trying to understand the people involved and what they're facing every day, what their job is like if you don't already know what it's like, and just understanding what's driving them, where they want to go, and getting to know them, that builds that relationship so you trust each other. So then when you're learning to communicate through all of that, you understand how you need to approach this person versus how you need to approach that person. Like, each one of my teammates is different. And so the approach I need to make with them is going to be a little bit different. And at least if I want to be the most effective. Now, I can get them all in a group and say, here's where we need to go, how we get in there, and we can problem solve together. But if I'm trying to ask an individual to do something specific, I need to approach them in a certain way so that I don't hurt any feelings, I don't cause confusion, I offer them the time and the space to ask questions however they need to let them voice to me where they might not feel so confident, or they want me to show them something, any of that. That's all the pre-work that happens before the demands are made. And it's a lot. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen to keep your team and your relationships in good order, because people change, things change, situations change. And so you just need to be kind of on top of it so you can understand where they're coming from when you do see the resistance, or when you see that they're down and they're struggling for whatever reason. So it could be that they're dealing with something personal and you don't know it because you haven't built that relationship with them. They don't feel comfortable telling you that kind of stuff. And I've definitely been there as a follower before, where I absolutely would not say anything about my personal life to my supervisor. And I thought that was a good idea, to really completely compartmentalize my life so that my home life stayed completely separate from my work life. But then I was doing things and feeling things and acting in a certain way that there was clearly a problem, but my supervisor didn't know anything about it because I refused to say anything, because there was no effort put into that relationship on either side. I was also in the wrong on that. So just there are times when people may resist doing what you're asking them to do. But as a leader, definitely look into it, because it might be you. And it's okay. It's okay. We've all been there. The point is that you make the effort and make the right choices to fix the problem, rather than letting it fester, you getting all mad, you getting frustrated, and then taking it out on the entire team. Because somebody doesn't want to do their portion of the work. Yes, they kind of have to. And to a point, if you consistently have this issue where they're maybe resistant to building a relationship with you and they're consistently not doing the work that they're assigned, then there are avenues through HR, human resources, that you can handle that kind of thing. But, give it a shot. It's not going to hurt. It'll probably be better. Learn to communicate with your team and make sure you build that relationship before you need to make any demands. It's basic animal training, so it works with people too. We build that relationship before we ask the animal to do anything that makes them uncomfortable. Okay. If you have any questions about that, or any other leadership or management things, or zoo and aquarium stuff, you can write it up in an email and send it to me at aquatazoo@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, and I hope that you do, don't forget you can follow or subscribe on your podcast player of choice. That way you'll get all of that sweet, sweet content as soon as it releases. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can find me at patreon.com/aquatazoo. And if you'd like to take a vacation and you don't know where to start, let me know. I happen to be a personal vacation advisor with Magical Vacation Planner, and I would love to help you out. It does not cost you anything extra. The links are in the show notes. Okay, thanks for listening. I heart your faces. Okay, bye.